Hello everyone and welcome to Deanne's Gluten-Free Kitchen. Today we're going to learn how to start and create a sourdough starter. So we're going to start with a few things that we need. There will be a PDF attached to this class and it's going to start with a few things that you need to have for supplies. Number one, a glass jar or a non-reactive container, a spatula, a kitchen scale. With your kitchen scale, you can get one from your local kitchen supply store, or you could go on Amazon. You can find one for around $20. Kitchen scale is really important. You want to have some brown rice flour, some water, and I've got a few different examples of water, and we'll talk about that as we get going. So first things first, what we're going to do is turn our scale on. There we go, zero it out. So we have our glass jar, it now weighs nothing. So we're starting with real basics because we deal with gluten-free flours and they can be a little bit on the expensive side. We're gonna do a really small starter to start with, right? So we're gonna start with our brown rice flour. So I'm gonna grab that and I'm going only with 20 grams of brown rice flour. So we take a little scoop, we've got our scale zeroed, we're gonna put 20 grams, that's 15, whoops. There we go, 20 grams of flour. I think I did 21, so that's all right. And then I'm going to be adding 20 grams of raisin water to this. Now the reason that we would use raisin water when we're first starting is to give our little ecosystem a little boost, because raisins have naturally occurring yeast on the skin, and when we soak the raisins in the water, it just gives our sourdough starter a kick to start with. So we're gonna add 20 grams of raisin water. 14, 17, 21. Well, we're 21 and 21, not so bad. All right, and then we're gonna give that a really good stir. You're gonna see it's gonna be super thick and kind of pasty, almost like toothpaste. That's what we're after. Now I use an extra fine brown rice, so you're gonna see it's quite thick, and this extra fine grind, it really absorbs the water, and that's okay, right? Some people like to add more water, but I don't, and it seems to work just fine. So we give it a good mix like this, and then what we're gonna do is cover it with a cloth. I like to use the elastic bands that I get off of my vegetables. Wrap that in there, and then we're just gonna put that aside. We're gonna come back to it tomorrow. Good morning, welcome back to day 2 of your brown rice sourdough starter. So today we're going to feed the starter. Now we take the cover off. This is the one we did yesterday. We're gonna take that cover off. We're going to zero out our scale. And we remember that we have 20 grams of flour and 20 grams of water. So we're gonna give it a little sniff. We don't notice anything yet, and that's totally normal. It's only day 1 or heading into day 2. Give it a little stir. It's gonna be quite thick and pasty, and that's okay. There we go, put that back on the scale there. Because we have 40 grams of starter, we're gonna add 40 grams of flour and 40 grams of water. Okay, so we're just gonna build on it. So I'm gonna start actually with my water. And today I'm not gonna use raisin water. I'm going to, because I already did that once, and I think once is enough. We're gonna add either bottled water, or you can add water that you've come from the tap that you've let sit out for 24 hours. So I do this often. I'll just keep a jug on the counter. That way my water is room temperature and it's dechlorinated. So to this I'm gonna add 40 grams of water. So I'm just gonna measure that. There's our 40 grams of water, and I'm gonna give it a really good stir to incorporate all of the starter from yesterday. We want it to dissolve, all of it just to dissolve in there. Give it a good stir. Excellent. So we're just working on building that really good ecosystem. We want that good wild yeast to develop. We want the wonderful smell that we get, that sour, tangy smell. So we're on our way. This is day 2. Put that on there. Now I've done the 40 grams of water. I'm gonna zero out my scale again, and I'm gonna add 40 grams of flour. We want to be careful. We want to try to keep as consistent with our measurements as possible. That's why the scale is so important. All right, there's 33, 39, 40, perfect. So get that 40 grams in, and again, because this is extra fine brown rice, it's gonna be quite thick. If you just use fine rice, you're gonna have a little bit more of a liquidy starter, and that's totally fine. It's just preference. And when we go to do our recipe, it'll show you if you're using a more thicker sourdough starter, you wanna add a little bit more water to your recipe, right? To work on that hydration level. So I'm just gonna give that a really good mix. Make sure it's all incorporated. And again, it's super thick and pasty. I'll just bring it out for you to take a look. See that? Like really thick and pasty, and that's good. I'm gonna spread that out along the bottom of my jar. All right. And again, we're gonna cover it with a cloth, and we're just gonna let it rest. And we're gonna come back and check it out tomorrow. Good morning and welcome back to Deanne's Gluten-Free Kitchen, day 3 of our sourdough starter. We're using a brown rice sourdough starter, so we're just gonna get going. We have our starter here, the water that we're using, the brown rice flour we're using, our spatula, our kitchen scale, and a jar that we can discard into, or just set up. So we're gonna put that on there. We're gonna zero out our scale, and we're gonna take 20 grams of our sourdough starter. Now I gave it a little bit of a sniff test already, and it's starting to get a tiny bit of the sourness, and that's what we're looking for. This is day 3, so it is starting to build its ecosystem, its little colony in there, and that wild yeast is pulling from the environment. So of course the raisin water that we started on day 1, and then also any wild yeast that's in our environment will go into the sourdough starter. And that makes everybody's sourdough starter unique because your house is different than my house. And so it will respond a little differently. And so it becomes part of an intuitive process that you start working through. So we're gonna take let's just take that. We're taking 20 grams of this starter. There we go. Put it in there, and we're gonna put that one aside. We're gonna add 20 grams of water and 20 grams of flour. And that's the feeding that we're gonna do for it today. So we do 20, 20, 20. So we zeroed out our scale, pouring in our water, zero our scale again. After we mix it up, you wanna make sure that all of that is dissolved. There we go, give it a good stir. There we are. And now we're gonna zero out our scale and add 20 grams of brown rice flour. That's 15, 20 grams. Awesome, and we're gonna give that a stir. We're gonna get a nice thick paste, and like it was the last few days. You can smell the flour right now. So as soon as we add the flour and the water, that sourness goes away, but it will start to develop as we let it sit on the counter. So we take this, again, we cover it with our cloth, our elastic band, and we come back for day 4. See you tomorrow. Good morning and welcome to day 4 of our gluten-free sourdough starter. Here we go. We'll take the lid off, the cloth, and it's elastic. Oh yeah, you can start smelling the smell. That's fantastic. Don't know if you can hear that, but you can see the sound of it is really coming. So we're getting some fantastic wild yeast developing in this container. So we're just gonna give it a little stir. Now again, this is day 4, so we're getting there. And every day what we're doing is building its strength. So as we add flour and water and it feeds and grows, it just builds its strength so that when we go to add it to a bread, it will have the strength that it needs to create the lift and rise that we're looking for. So we're gonna do what we do on day 4, and we'll do this from day 4 to day 8, day 7 to 8. I'm gonna put this on here, zero out my scale. I've got my non-reactive glass jar here. And then what I'm gonna do, so we know that this is 20 grams of starter, 20 grams of flour, 20 grams of water. So we have 60 grams in here. I'm just gonna do half. So I'm gonna take, from this point forward, it's half. So we're gonna do 30 grams of starter. And it's okay if those little dehydrated bits get in there. There we go. Oops, a little too much. That's 35 grams. So I'm gonna just take some of that away. A little bit away. All right, that's our 30 grams of starter. And to that, we're going to add 30 grams of water. And again, I'm using the dechlorinated water. You could use bottled water or filtered water. I just don't mind keeping it on the counter. We want it to be room temperature, so I just fill my jug, leave it on the counter. It works fantastic. So we're gonna add 30 grams of water. Pour nice and slow so we don't go over. Give that a really good mix till it's all dissolved. So it's fully liquid, no starter left, it's just all, yep, there we go. Doesn't take much. And then we're gonna add 30 grams of our brown rice flour. A little bit more. 26, 28. I'm always careful because I have a tendency to put too much in. Little teeny bit more. There we go, 30 grams. Put that lid on there and then let's give it a stir. So again, it's going to be thicker, but as we develop, or as it develops, it gets a really nice consistency. It's kind of like a thick, like muffin batter, pancake batter maybe. Little thicker, I'll show you. So let's just grab a handful of it. So you can see it's quite thick. Again, that's because I'm using the extra fine. So if yours isn't that thick, that's okay. It doesn't need to be. The thicker starter, I just like using it. It seems to work well for me and my breads that I make. And all my recipes kind of relate to that. So using that extra fine brown rice flour is a really good way to go. The other reason for the extra fine that I find is brown rice flour, or any rice flour, can have a bit of a grainy texture to it. So when you use the extra fine, it doesn't show up in your baked goods like that at all. It's one of my favorites. So I'm just gonna scrape down the sides like this, scrape off my spatula, and then we're gonna cover it and put it in a warm place. Welcome back to Deanne's Gluten-Free Kitchen. Today we've jumped ahead a couple days, so we're doing the same thing from day 4 on day 5 and day 6. Today's day 7. We're going to do the same thing again. We're going to be doing this again and again until about day 14, and then our bread should be good to go. But I just wanted you to take a look so hopefully you can hear how it sounds. It has a great sound and a great smell. So actually it smells and feels like it could be ready, but we really want to give it a chance to build a really strong foundation so that when we bake our first loaf of bread, it has enough of that wild yeast to give us the excellent rise that we're looking for. So we're going to do the same thing today that we've done all along. We're going to cut this in half. So in here I have the 50 grams of flour, 50 grams of water, and 50 grams of starter. So we're just going to cut it back and we're going to do the same thing. So 50, 50, 50. Gonna let it rest, and then I'm gonna come back to you on day 14 when it's ready to bake. Good morning and welcome back to Deanne's Gluten-Free Kitchen. It's day 14. Today's the day that I think we're ready to do some baking. So we're just going to build our levain for today. That's what we're going to use to bake a loaf of bread. So we'll get that going. I just want to show you, we've done the same process over and over. When we switched to like 50 grams of flour, 50 grams of water, 50 grams of starter, I believe that was like day 5. From that point, that's what we did, and today is day 14. You can hear the sound. Makes a nummy, crunchy sound. Smells delicious. We're gonna give it a really good little stir. What we're doing right now is building a levain for the loaf that we're baking. And basically that's a fancy term for our starter for a loaf of bread. So we keep now a mother starter that we continue to feed and keep on the counter, or we can keep it in the fridge. Either way, we want to take it out and feed it before we bake with it. I keep mine on the counter because I bake almost daily, if not every other day. So I keep it on the counter. But if you bake like once a week, keeping it in the fridge, pulling it out, feeding it before you're baking is a fantastic way to do it. So we're going to zero out our scale. I've got my non-reactive glass jar, and we're gonna add 50 grams of our starter that is ready to go. I just can't wait to bake a loaf of bread. 40. There we go, 50 grams. I'm gonna set this aside, and what I'm gonna do with this is I will feed this and keep it on the counter, and that's my one that I go to that I create my daily levain from. So I always have one that is ready to go. That way I'm not using all of my starter. Sometimes that can happen, and then you're like, oh no, how do I make my next loaf of bread? I don't wanna do another 14 days. You can get away with, even if you've left a little bit in the jar, adding a little bit of flour, a little bit of water, and growing it from that. So not all is lost. All right, so now we're gonna add 50 grams of water. And this is a 1:1:1 ratio. You can, if you're baking like once a week and you want to just feed it so it takes a longer time for it to grow and bloom, you can feed it like a 1:2:2 or a 1 part sourdough starter to 5 parts flour to 5 parts water. It just takes much longer, so then it can just be on the counter longer without having to be fussed with. You can check it out. In the fridge as well, that works too. Give that a good stir, and then we're just gonna add 50 grams of our brown rice flour. Nothing fancy, we'll just get it in there, ready to go. And in about 6 hours, it's gonna be ready to make our first loaf of bread. There we go. Now this class is just for the sourdough starter, but I will have classes, or do have classes, that are gonna be teaching how to make sourdough bread. So you can check those out as well, if you're interested. Okay, so we do the same thing, give it a really good stir. We're gonna cover it and put it in a warm spot. Now it's summertime here, so everywhere in my house is nice and warm. But if it's in the winter time when you're doing this, you wanna keep it in a warm spot, and there's a couple things you can do. You can, I'm just gonna grab a cloth here, there we go. And an extra elastic. There we go. So I'm gonna come back and check on this, and then in about 5 to 6 hours, it's pretty warm in here, so it might go a little faster. You can also, some people do this on there, is put a, let me show you actually, put an elastic at where your current starter sits with its flour and water, and when it's come back, gluten-free doesn't always double, like when you come back and check on it. If it hasn't doubled, that's okay. What you're looking for is that nice domed top. It gets like from here, you just see a little bit of a dome, and that means that it's active. You want to grab it before it starts to fall or just as it starts to fall, either one of those, and you'll get a good loaf of bread. Okay, so we're gonna stick that aside, and that's it pretty much for our how to make your gluten-free sourdough starter. Again, a couple things that you can do is you can store it on the counter, but feed it daily if you're storing it on the counter. If you're storing it in the fridge, put a lid on it. I use like these containers that have these great little bamboo lids with a seal. That just keeps it from going bad in the fridge. It's a great way just to store it. Nothing gets in. You're preventing any other bacteria from entering into it. And it will stay in the fridge upwards of a few weeks. So I can show you what that looks like in a minute. All right, we're back. I just wanted to show you what it looks like when you've stored one in the fridge. So this one has been in the fridge for a week. And so I wanted to let it in there so I could show you what happens. So I've got the lid on it. Take the lid off. It has what's called like a hooch on top. It's a liquid that has a fairly strong smell to it, alcohol acetone smell. I'm not sure if you can see that. I could pour it into another container. Do I have one here? I've got a bowl right here, just to show you what it looks like. So it gets this layer of liquid on top like this, fairly clear, a little bit smoky maybe with a little bit of flour in it. This is what they call hooch, and it's actually a protective measure for your sourdough starter. And you have a couple choices to do. You can stir it in, And what it does is just makes the flavor of the sourdough starter stronger. Or you can pour it off. Either way, it's no problem. Just give it a really good mix before you pull out what you need to bake your bread. So again, if we needed 150 grams of starter for our loaf of bread, we would take 50 grams of this, 50 grams of water, 50 grams of brown rice flour, and then leave it on the counter like we're doing with our starter that we started. And this is what it just looks like. It's just the same. It's just thick, pancake-like consistency, and it's good to go. So it just has to warm up and reactivate. So by feeding it, leaving it on the counter, it will rise and be ready to bake with. Thank you for joining me and learning how to make your own sourdough starter. I hope that this has been an example for you of how easy it is. It's not hard, it's just time consuming, but it's a labor of love. When you make gluten-free sourdough, it takes time and it takes energy, but it's a gift for yourself and it's a gift for those who eat gluten-free. It tastes really good to nourish your body. So I'm really glad that you joined me on this journey. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can reach me through my Instagram, Deanne's GF Kitchen, or through my website at www.deannesglutenfreekitchen.com. And I'll answer any questions that I can help with. Please look forward to our future classes. I'm going to have one on baking bread, of course, sourdough bread. We're going to be doing a traditional artisan round. We're going to do a more deeper developed flavor one, so more of a rustic, almost rye-like. Of course, it's not rye because it's not gluten-free, but a rye-like bread. And then we'll also teach how to make a sandwich bread. So hopefully you'll want to come and join me for that class. And then we're going to look for future classes on things like pasta making, muffin making, cookie making. I have a passion for making gluten-free goods that taste fantastic and that people who aren't gluten-free want to enjoy them as well. So hopefully you can join me and you've got something from this course. Please reach out if you have any questions. Thanks again.